All right, guys, welcome back. Another episode of Renew Your Finance. We got a great episode here for you. We're going to wrap up our series that we've been talking on the past 4 weeks. Some of the top reasons people go into debt. So once again, guys, welcome and like us on Facebook as well as join us on YouTube. And let us know, guys, if you're in the chat. If you're able to join us live here tonight, we're back live. We had to do a pre-recorded session last week because I had a prior engagement that I had to go to for my daughter's basketball game. But without further ado, guys, we're going to jump right in and get things going. And we're going to touch base on a new topic that we're going to introduce here in the second half of the show. But without further ado, Rondell, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, certainly. So welcome back. Thank you for having us in your living rooms or in your cars or wherever you may be tonight. Again, I know it's been quite a while since we got back together due to the holidays and all the festivities that we just got over. But just to get you up to speed where we've been, where we're at, and then we'll let you know later in this podcast where we're going. So our first topic of discussion that we talked about was needs versus wants. Now, many of you have chimed in during that time when we were discussing what is truly a need and what is truly a want. And sometimes we get the two mixed up. And for a little exercise that we do in my household, and I've done with others in my job at my work site, is that we tend to list those things down, what are wants and what are needs. And so that way we can differentiate between the two and not get the two mixed up, because oftentimes emotional comes into play when we talk about needs and wants, and those things can get misconstrued very easily. So that's one of the things that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago now, before we broke for the holidays. The second topic is that what do we tell ourselves and how does it feel? We tend to tell ourselves that, you know what, I need that, or I want that. And then we fixate an emotional feeling to that thing that we tell ourselves with, and ultimately go out there and spend and buy that money. Statistics, if you've been looking over the news over the last couple of weeks, it would show you how much America has spent on the holidays that just passed. One weekend throughout the holidays, I want to say it was Black Friday, just over that weekend alone, $9 billion were spent. That's a large amount of money, but how much of that money contributed to what we tell ourselves and how we feel about it? And so we discussed that. We dove deep and dived into that topic to just get an understanding that sometimes we make some impulsive buys based on what we tell ourselves. You know what? I deserve that. I'm gonna go out there and get that. But then sometimes we have that proverbial buyer's remorse right after. It's not as shiny as it used to be when we first picked it up or we first purchased it. So we discussed that just prior to going to the holidays, and then right after the holidays, we came back on the 9th of January. We started discussing something that I believe it affects us all, whether we truly want to admit that to ourselves or not. And we talked about social acceptance. We've all have those circles of friends, family, and loved ones, or even associates that we may find ourselves in that environment at one time or another. And we tend to find ourselves possibly doing things financially based upon wanting to be accepted, or a social status and or privilege. And Adrian and I, during that week, that night, we discussed how we got caught in that proverbial cycle. We talked about, how we were in high school or even middle school, probably at the time, and we saw some peers of ours, or some individuals that we went to school with that dressed a certain way, presented themselves a certain way from a financial standpoint, and we desired that too, to be amongst that crowd also, which made us make some financial decisions in order to be a part of. And now we're going to expand on that, because that just do not stop during high school. That don't stop during middle school. Some of those behaviors, and that's what I like to call it. It is actually a behavior. Some of those behaviors of wanting to be socially accepted or have a social status or present a certain privilege about ourselves, that can transpire not only in high school, but that can go as far into our adult life. And now we want to touch on that on that life now. Not what you did yesteryear when you was a kid, but now what are you doing now as an adult? And so Adrian and I had a great conversation discussing that as we got off that call that evening and throughout a couple of weeks of how some new things that we were never exposed to when we were kids. Now we're exposed to those things as an adult, but we're still operating with that same mentality. Adrian, elaborate on some of those things that we discussed during the after the call that Monday night in regards to now we're adults. We're playing in a new arena now. No longer mama and daddy is the one flipping the bill to make us look good. Now we're flipping that bill ourselves. Do you believe or perceive that mindset has changed once we became adults about that being socially accepted?
I agree 100%. I take it from the standpoint of we're single back when my single days were,
Okay.
and how I carried myself because, and I know some of the other guys that's on here will be able to relate to this. Everything we did as single men was to attract the opposite sex, the women, to attract women. We bought cars with that in mind. That was our ultimate goal of why we were doing things, and we used stuff as I call it peacocking, so when the peacock is strutting around and he's trying to find a mate, he put his feathers out. So I call it peacocking, so we were peacocking. We buy a car, and just having the car wasn't good enough. We had to go buy rims for the car, or we had to put a sound system in the car. Just so people would notice that sets us different. It puts us in a different space than just having the basic. So, and from us having to acquire all these things, as adults and as we got older, it kind of, debt started coming into play because we didn't have the money to afford all these things we were trying to get, or we were trying to accumulate.
Not at all.
So in most cases, that's where, those credit cards came into play. Those, you being able to go apply for 0% financing, Best Buy, all these different things that we started out with that young age, and it kind of just progressed and became normal ways of life as we became adults. So, has anybody else out in the chat, the ones that are out there, have you guys experienced that? Let us know some of your feedback on that topic as far as how social acceptance and how other people thought of you maybe caused you to do certain things from a financial standpoint. As far as buying things that you probably didn't have the money right away to afford, or if you did have the money, you spent all of your money to acquire that item. So what about you, Rondell? Have you had that same scenario for you as an adult?
Well, as an adult, when you grew up in humble beginnings, and don't get me wrong, I had a love-filled life, but nonetheless, I don't come from a silver spoon. I come from a hardworking family that, we more or less met the needs that we needed in the house. However, you always have those yearnings and those wants that transcend childhood to adulthood. And when I became an adult and I was able to start working and start to accumulate some money. Now, mind you, I wasn't accumulating a lot of money. Really, I wasn't accumulating anything because I won't save it anything. So that's another story for another time. I was just more or less making money, spending money, making money. It was, it was a proverbial rat race or a cycle that I was in. And so what really got me into wanting to purchase things that others may have had or wanted was the fact that I was just around them and I was exposed to that type of life. So fast forward past my youth years when I lived at home and I go into the military. Now, there's a fictitious story out there that once you get in the military, you're going to be making a whole lot of money. That is far from the truth, to be truthfully honest about it. But me not knowing, the first thing that I did when I enlisted in the military, I remember I drove to Kinston, North Carolina, and it was a Mitsubishi dealership there. And I go out there saying, yeah, when I get to my first base, I'm gonna come back. And I sit in it was a Montero Sport. It was one of the hottest new SUVs at the particular time. And why did I really wanted that Montero Sport? That's the true story right there. It wasn't the fact that I needed a Montero Sport or I had a lot of things I need to be carrying around or I need that particular vehicle. It was all because I was at the time before I actually went in and went off the basic training, I was hanging out with someone who had one, who was an associate of one of my relatives. He had one. It was so nice and I wanted it. And then as we drove around, I saw how the attention that he got driving around in it. And it was a very nice, it was a very nice vehicle. Don't get me wrong, but I was still utilizing that childish mentality because I wasn't even considering what this man may have paid for this vehicle or he would make a payment for it. That was the first thing from my mind. The most immediate thing in my mind was if I acquired this vehicle, I would get the same respect, if you want to call it, or the same attention that he is receiving from not only the opposite sex, but also from his fellow boys, because, they were commenting on it. Next thing you know, they had a Montero Sport, and then next thing you know, another guy came out with it. He couldn't get the Montero Sport. He got another SUV. So it became contagious almost. And they were like, hey, Rondell, you need to get you one too, man. We know you're going off to the military for to make that money. You need to get one too. So that led me to travel up to Kinston, North Carolina to the Mitsubishi dealership. And it was a brand new dealership because Mitsubishi was not very known in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And so the closest one was in Kinston. And I'm sitting in this Sport. And this guy was selling me on this vehicle too. He was like, when you come back home, just bring in your LES. And we'll get you in it. Don't worry. Don't even sweat it. We take care of our military. You see what I'm saying? And so that was some of the things that the challenges I went to. Now, did I ever go through getting that Montero Sport? No, because the military woke me up real quick when I got to my first duty station to let me know this is the payment that you're trying to acquire, but this is what you get paid on a biweekly basis. and it just didn't add up. And that's, but to be truthfully honest with you, had it added up, I would have done it. To be honest with you, I would have done it because when you're getting so enticed and want to be somewhat in a circle of a group of people, or you feel this compelling to be around these people, and the only way you can be amongst these people is to have X, you will start thinking of some creative ways to make X happen in order to be affiliated to be around. And I think that's one thing we never touch about. We don't talk about what creative things that we may have done in order to be or in order to socialize with this group of people. I know I've done some things in order to socialize with a group of people that didn't give me any return on investment, put it that way. It would have been best for me to burn that money up than to spend that money on X just to socialize with Y, only to find out it was wasting my time and effort to socialize with Y. But I've already spent all this X amount of money over here. I could have got more use out of it by doing many other things. But I think that's the nature of what's going on. There's a statistic that I read today out there that talks about this very thing, because we are talking about people that we immediately interact with, like you and I, me and Adrian, we guys who are on the call, we talk every day. He has a level of influence on me. I have a level of influence on him, not to the degree where we're going to put ourselves in any harms or whatever the case may be from a financial standpoint. But now, that's just because of the years that we've known each other. We went to school with each other, went to college with each other. And then I went off to the military, went to the college. But we've been in our social circle with each other for the last 20, 30 plus years. But now social, that is an expansive term. It's no longer who stay down the street, who stays across town. You can be in a social circle, sitting in your own living room every evening, every day, with this little device that we now call a cell phone, and the apps that the cell phone that it has on. So I was reading about, because social circles, you want to old school that stuff. Oh, we're going to the country club and be around the socialites. No, it's no longer that. It's the Instagram, it's the Twitter, it's the Snapchat, it's the Facebook for your old folks. It's the all the social media sites that are out there that is still so prominent that you feel like you're involved or you're close to these individuals. Right. You know, I know people who got hundreds and thousands of what they call friends on Facebook, but you may know about 5 of them all together.
Right.
But those individuals are influential on you also. So this statistic that I read today this poll happened, or this study actually happened back in 2015 by Digitis. It says 52% of consumers say that Facebook's influenced their purchases both in-store and online. Now think about that. You got 1,000 friends, or so to speak. You got 1,000 people on your thing. And so you see everything they do. So now you're sitting at home, possibly, going on with your baby steps, doing your budget, you're in baby step 2, and then your homeboy pops up there and they vacation. Jet skiing, YOLOing it up, So my question is that, now that we're talking about, being social pressure or not necessarily social pressure, social acceptance, do these social medias have that much influence over us that it also kind of entice us to spend or control our spending? What do you think?
No doubt. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Because some of the things that I've seen on social media, like some of the vacation spots I've seen people on, and that has influenced some of the places me and Shonda have gone. Like some of the cruises we went on, because we saw some of what other people had posted, and that does influence some of your buying habits. So, but my biggest concern with all this is that we make debt such a big part of our lifestyle that we don't even think about it. It's just automatically, if we got the credit card, we got the limit, we just go swipe it, don't even think about it. It's the whole thing with financial literacy was never taught to us, and we just go by what we see and everybody else do. We see people in Macy's or these other places, and they in front of you, and you see them. They got all this stuff on the counter. It come up to X amount of dollars, and the next thing you see come out of their hand, swipe that credit card. And it's just like we became numb to it. So, I don't know if anybody else kind of experienced that as well, but it's just, the things we go out and we get the things that we want, and we really have no thought process of if we can afford it or not. Now, there's some things on certain levels that we know that we can't afford. Like I would never, even when I was in my whole debt phrase where we were buying stuff on getting car loans and all this other stuff, I would never walk up to a Bentley dealership and go in there and look at Bentleys, because I know that I can't. I know that's out of my range.
Well, here's my thought on that. I agree and I disagree with you. And here's where I disagree with you on the situation. I think, and those who are on the live feed, be as it may, chastise me if you like, but I'm gonna be 100 with you. I think that people are not unconscious in the decisions that they make when it comes down to spending their money. I think they're very conscious. I think I think that even when you see that person that's on social media and they may be vacationing in a certain area, you're well aware if you didn't have 2 pennies yesterday, you still don't have them 2 pennies today, but you're going to find a dime to try to get to the place that you want to be, regardless how you're going to get there, regardless if it's going to put you in debt. So I'm not going to take the responsibility from the person. It's just in your case, when you were talking about that Bentley, you knew your risk versus reward. You knew
that's true. That's
you,
true.
you knew that, okay, I want that. Because I remember a car that you told me that one of your coworkers was driving. It was a Bentley or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it was one of your coworkers that used to work at one of your jobs. It was a Bentley, and it was a nice car, nice looking car.
Yeah. I sat in it. I sat in it.
However, the risk versus reward came into play. Yeah. You know what? If I get this, there's not going to be a great reward out of making that type of step. Where other people, they'll go YOLO. You know what? I'll figure it out later. You know what? I want to hang out with my friends so bad that I'm willing to, spend this money that I probably set aside for something that was very important. But everybody seems to be having a good time. Everybody's having a good time on the trip.
Right.
You
only live once.
We only live once. I work hard. You know what? They look very fun. Everybody came back from the last trip talking about it. And then the next trip come on, and all sense of reality in regards to
go out the door.
Go right out the door. And we find ourselves in that. And that's because, it's just, we feel like we missed out on something. We're missing out. I did. I know I did. I felt like I missed out on something. Let's just be real about it. So I'm not going to take it away from the audience or any living, breathing adult that may come with us on the channel. If you're saying that, social media is a catalyst, but when it comes down to pulling the trigger and creating the action, I believe we all are cognizant of what we're doing. You know what I mean? I that's just my opinion. Now, those of you that join us tonight, if you feel differently, go right ahead, chime in and tell me what your differences are. We can go back and forth on it all day, but that's just my stance. I think that the reason why I didn't get that Montero, because I had to look at it. My risk was this is all I had, but it was not going to be a great game getting that Montero. That's just my 2 cents. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So this is my thought on it. We at this point now where we got we're all on this call, and the folks that are joining us are on here because we want to change our thought process on how we do our finances. So what is something that we can do that will help us change this thought process when it comes to that social acceptance and having these impulses to do these things based off of social acceptance. Now, for me, this is what was really big for me was that and the Bible talks about this is contentment, and contentment is not, and a lot of us say, well, he's content. It doesn't mean that you're settling for mediocre. Content means that I am happy with what I've been blessed with until my season comes for me to move into another area, to progress. So that was one of the biggest things that helped us, get over that hump, was first and foremost learning to be content and happy with what we had. Because if all of us think about everything that we have right now, we prayed to God for, and God provided it for us. Like our homes we stayed in. A lot of us that are Christians on the call, we prayed to God, for these homes, and then he blessed us with it. And then all of a sudden, because I measure where we are now, and I didn't do this before. I used to measure myself based off of what I saw other people around me doing, what degree this person had, what job this person had, what car this person drove, what house this person stayed in. And then, as a society, we kind of compare ourselves to what we see around us. When in reality, your true measure of success is really looking at your own life and where you came from. Where were you at, this time last year? Are you better off than you were 2 years ago? Me and DeShonda came from living, when we first got married, we stayed in with her parents and all we had was just that one bedroom. That was our space. And then now we have this. We were blessed with the home we live in now, and thank God now we've got it paid off. But I'm looking at this home and I'm talking to coworkers at work, and they're telling me about their basements they got, and my home doesn't have a basement. So now this tells you how discontentment sets in on you. So I'm listening to these folks. I've been loving this house since we got in it, but now I'm talking to people that got basements. They talking about finishing their basements, and they putting these big, theater rooms in, pool tables, and I'm like, man, I don't have a basement. I don't have one. So my behind goes home, pulls out the iPad, start designing a whole nother wing for the house so I can have, my basement, so to speak. So, and we got kind of caught up in that. But then, as we got on this journey with Dave and we started talking about contentment, I looked around, I was like, you know what? We got rooms in this house now that we don't even go in. So why am I so thirsty to build this whole nother wing onto the house when we got bedrooms and dining and formal dining rooms that nobody ever goes in?
I mean, that was just a momentary lapse of thought. You know what I mean? I'm gonna chalk it up to that. Shout out to Deshonda. I'm gonna credit that with Deshonda bringing them back to the real life. But
no, she was on board.
Okay, never mind. I take that credit back.
Actually, I was very happy when he said he wasn't going to do it anymore.
Okay, then I give her back that credit. So, but Karen made a good point. You had to limit your exposure, or in her case, she talked about limit your friends. That's what I did. I had to reassess the circles of individuals that I was around, to be truthfully honest about it. And most people, and some of those people, agree with me or not, some of those people were family members, that I had in my family. I really had to reassess, because what was good for them was not good for me, and where I was trying to go. Not to say that I was better than them or any of that in that case. It was just, I had to limit myself, my exposure around individuals that were not going in the same direction that I was trying to travel in. And the direction that I was trying to travel in was not the direction of being seen. Like Adrian knows, by the time you know that I've done something, I've already done it by the time you come into the knowledge of it. It's because that's just over the years I've learned to, there's a way to move, and then there's a way to move. And then there's a way to expose, like even when it comes down to social media sites, I'm not really caught up into, social media sites, because social media site, the eyes is the window to the soul. I believe that sometimes you can get caught up with the exposure of being around a certain group or a certain sect, or is what you see. So, and I take it as the same thing as porno. Unless you're super immune to porno, you're likely to get caught up in it if you find yourself exposed to it quite often or on a frequent basis. It's the same thing being around people who likes to spend money or like to do those things that you may not like. That's not good for me to do that. So I had to limit my exposure to those individuals and those things, and social media will get you. I mean, we talked about it, and again, another kudos to Shonda. We was talking about a new grill, and we just bought the grills that we had. Well, at least I did. I mean,
see,
I just
Shonda,
bought that.
He's the reason why I've been looking at that grill. So you can blame him.
I just bought the grill a year ago, so I really could not justify buying another $700-800 grill when the one that I currently have works just fine. So, you know what? But
it ain't Wi-Fi enabled.
It ain't Wi-Fi enabled, but I just stopped thinking about it, because I was like, look, the more I start thinking about it and the more I keep looking at it, I will find myself wanting that thing. And really, what do I really want it for? I really want it because I've seen someone on the social media site, YouTube, that is, utilizing the grill, and they're talking it up so highly that it was infectious almost, to the point where I shared it with you, and therefore you actually started looking at it, and and things of that nature. So I think one of the steps that we have to take as an adult, that we have to limit our exposure to things that's going to cause us to get us off the path that we know that we have set placed our feet on, and that's the direction that we're traveling in. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, and I think what you said before that I wanted to go back to was the circle of friends or the circle of people that you have around you. That was one of the main reasons that I think God led me to create this group and to create this community, is so that now we've got like-minded people that are thinking in the same mindset that we're thinking in. We're thinking about how to properly manage our finances. We're thinking about like I never had the realization of living a life that didn't involve debt at all. I never even thought about it. Never even as I prayed to God for increase on jobs or new jobs and these increases. When I did get those increases, I never once thought about taking that increase and getting myself out of that bondage of the debt that I had. That increase, I always had plans for that increase even before I received it. But that increase was always to acquire something else, to acquire more, to do more, to take, to go. Like me and Shauna were talking about this before. Like we went from, when we first started dating, we went from eating at Applebee's and getting, $10 sirloin steaks to now we're going to, trips or these other high-end restaurants. So the increases that God had blessed us with, our lifestyle just increased, and we're still in the same situation that we were. But just imagine if we kept the same mindset that we had, when we had a little, and we took that money and properly stewarded it the way that God intended for us to do.
So my question is, Adrian, is that what influenced you to start going to trips and Ruth Chris and Texas Day Brazil and Maggiano's and some of the other restaurants? What influenced you? Because none of those.
We were invited.
Okay.
We were invited because some of these places I'd never been to. Some of these places, when you come from eating at Applebee's and you go to a restaurant and you're looking at $10 meals or $12 meals, and now you go into a restaurant that you had never experienced paying, $22 or $32 or even $60 for a meal. And that's just for one person. You start, that's why you start thinking, well, I need to make more money so that I can afford to go to these places, and then now you get your increases and your lifestyle starts to increase. Now Applebee's is no longer good enough for you. You talking Applebee's down, but when you was at the bottom, Applebee's was like if we went to Applebee's, we were doing something. Now Applebee's is just like that ain't good enough for me. I admitted this. Me and Shonda was at Applebee's one time, and I ordered a sirloin. They had a deal where you can get the chicken and sirloin for $20. I ordered a sirloin. Man, I almost threw up in my mouth. I was like, this is terrible.
Heisey. You Heisey did it.
Our lifestyle, so to speak, changed. Our lifestyle, so to speak, changed. And we take that with us into other things. Like I never had potato bread. The bread you buy in the grocery store, the potato bread and all those, until I went to somebody's house and that's what they were given. They went to a cookout or whatever, and this was what they had, on display. And we tasted it, and now all of a sudden, every time we went to the grocery store, we had to have potato bread. Never had it before in my life, but now all of a sudden, this is a thing. And the potato bread cost 3 times more than the bread I was buying previously. So
I would tell you that the being caught up in being socially accepted, that can also affect our relationships too, from a monetary standpoint.
Yes.
you know,
Agreed.
and most men probably won't admit this, and I don't have nothing to be ashamed of, about it. So it is what it is. I have, I've been around guys in the military who will constantly buy their spouses, jewelry and certain other things, because that was the thing. That was the thing to do. That's what they were doing. And then you find yourself like, you know what? I'm gonna do that for my wife. I want her to have the charm. I remember buying Stephanie one of those Tiffany charm bracelets. They had a little charms on it. And then you buy the little figurine, the little charms that are eventually you are fixate with the bracelet. Them charms are not cheap. And you know what? I bought it for all the wrong reasons, to be truthfully honest about it. I bought it because you know what? I seen other guys that was in the military with, and this is not too long after we just got married too. Other with they were buying their wives, and I'm like, oh, that's the thing to do. You buy your wife these charm bracelets, and then you put a charm over there when you go to certain places, whether you go to Florida, whatever the case may be. She wore that once.
Right.
Out of all the
never,
years,
and she never once asked for it.
Never once asked for it.
Uh-huh.
Never once asked for it. Received it nonetheless. She took it nonetheless. She thought, but the gesture wasn't the gesture that it should have been versus what I gave it for. And sometimes we have to, it's not us trying to one up someone, but sometimes we get into that competitiveness where we're trying to one up the other person because you know what? I want to let them know that I can hang with them too. I could be, I can stand amongst you guys too. Because I remember we were talking about how big our houses were going to be when we were going to retire. I remember one guy was telling me he was going to have a 3,500 square foot house, and I was like, "Yeah, me too." Mind you, I said that because of who I was amongst. And at the time, these guys were acquiring these 3,500 square foot homes at this particular time in Texas, no doubt. And I looked at this home and I'm like, man, this home is massive. I can't clean this thing, man. This thing is too big to clean.
Right.
But the mentality of want to acquire something like that didn't leave me because I ended up getting a 35 square foot home, almost 3,500 square foot in Germany, 3 levels. And to the point where it was just too much to handle. And me being a little OCD or maybe a little bit more OCD than I would like to be, it was a lot of work. And then the guys were like, well, we got maids. Oh, let me get a maid.
Right.
let me get a cleaning lady.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I ended up getting me a cleaning lady, coming in every 2 weeks, washing, folding clothes. The whole 9 yards. The only thing I didn't get out of was that Italian meal that she cooked. I could have got that if I'd have asked for it, but that'd have been a little bit extra. But these are the things that happens when we find ourselves just because it's not bad doesn't make it good. It's good for you.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm not going to say that what we did was wrong per se.
Right.
But the motive behind it wasn't good. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Because it was just it was just very excessive, and like Suzanne said, it does add up, and that's the problem. Is it adds up to the point where we don't even realize,
where all of our money's going, and that's exactly right, Rohan. Keeping up with the Joneses, exactly. So we did. Rondell brought up a great exercise we did the other day, and I would highly recommend this for everybody as we're wrapping up here. We only got 15 minutes left, but it was an exercise that he wrote down. How much you spend. Like, say you have a car note, and if your family has more than one car note, he put that expense down, and then he added up how much it was per month. And he added that up for the whole year. And say you had a $500 car note and you put that down, and that's $6,000, that you're paying every year, that's coming out of your salary. All right. So now you put down, how much is your house note? and you put that down, and then you add these up, and then you see that, okay, just in debt payments, how much of my income is going into these debt payments? And this is not even talking about, how much you're spending for, clothes for kids, or you're spending on groceries, or you're spending on gas. And then, as or you're spending on lunch, because I had a habit of, every time I came to work, we used to go downstairs. They had a cafeteria downstairs. We used to go down there and get breakfast. I come in at 7. The other folks come in and it's like, hey, what y'all doing? We get ready to go down and get breakfast. I'm right out there with them in line. $4, $5. And then we started, and then we did this exercise, and we kind of broke down, which I wanted to do this on the whiteboard so you guys can really visualize and see this. But the $5 for breakfast that I was spending, and then you go out for lunch, and let's say we spent $8 for lunch. That's $14, roughly $14 that I spent that day just for me, not including what Shonda may have done when she went out to lunch, to go out to eat lunch for her job. So just me alone, if I only did that 15 times out of the month, and that was just $15, I've now spent about $300 a month just eating breakfast and eating lunch in a 15-day period. So if you add that up, along with whatever my wife say, if she went out and ate lunch, and say she did about the same, just the two of us eating lunch is $600. And most of us say, well, I don't spend a lot for breakfast, it's only $3 or $4. But when you put it in perspective and you track this stuff and you look at it, you actually see how much of your money is going out, and how much. And if somebody told you that, hey, you spent $1,000 eating out last month, and you had no idea that you spent that much money, would that alarm you if I came to you and I told you that, hey, you hired me to monitor your finances for you, and I told you, hey, last month you spent $1,000 eating out? Would that cause any of the folks, and you guys chime in on the chat here, would that cause any kind of concern to you if your financial person say, hey, you spent $1,000 eating out? Would you believe that you spent $1,000 eating out? Because I didn't. When me and Shonda first got on this program, and we ran the numbers and it downloaded our transactions into the budget, and it showed us that we spent like $1,000, and this is like just eating out, eating breakfast, going to Center Bistro, going out to dinner with friends and that kind of stuff. Just in that last month alone, we had spent, over $1,000 just eating out. So that's why it's so important that this financial literacy is taken into account. And that exercise you showed me last week really showed me, when we tell people that, hey, we were able to pay off X amount of dollars, $10,000 in a year, $20,000 in a year, $60,000 in a year of debt. It's because we focused and we got in and figured out where our money was going. That same money has always been there. We just didn't know where it was going.
Yeah, I would say that we knew that we spent the money, but without having something in front of your face to tell you where it went.
Yeah, we had no visual concept of how that money got spent.
So we do those exercises, Stephanie and I do them with people at work too, guys. Mm-hmm. I mentor someone every Monday and Wednesday on these same topics that we're talking about here. And we do these exercises because if it's not in front of your face, then you tend to lose what Adrian is talking about. You tend to lose sight of what you're actually really doing versus what you think you're doing. And we do it so this is something that you can practice in habit if you want to, or you can, let me put the disclaimer out there. If you're by yourself, then you have carte blanche to practice that in private if you want to, because you have no one that you will have join you in doing this exercise. If you're married or you have a significant other, like you're about to be married, whatever, I implore that you practice this exercise. And it's basically just showing you what your operating expenses are. Because what's operating? You are. You're the one operating. You're the one moving and shaking and always going here from to and fro. And sometimes at such a rapid pace, you don't realize the transactions that you're doing, or you don't see it. And we do the same, people are creatures of habit. So the transaction they do on a monthly basis is always somewhat the same transaction. You may have that one anomaly here and there, had a flat tire or something like that, to get a tire or whatever the case may be, but they commonly do the same. So you just put it down, and so you can see where you at, and then see what you're bringing in versus what your expenditures are, and then you start taking a look at it like, I didn't know I even did that. So
Mm-hmm.
So Stephanie and I, we do that, like, we run through the numbers on a monthly basis, but not to that grand of detail. But bi-yearly and yearly, we do that because if we're about to make a great change, like we made a great change, and if we're going to make a great shift, we need to see how we're operating, because how we operated last year may not be how we operate this year. Last year, it was everything, all hands on deck. We got a goal that we're driving towards, and we need to just try to put as much revenue towards that goal. This year, it's going to be something different, but we need to see everything that we're doing and understand that this is what we're doing, and understand that, okay, now where did that come from? Because I've done something that I didn't realize I was doing. That may be because last year I had a CrossFit membership. That was $200. This year I went back to, American Family Fitness. That's only $80. So there was a change in revenue. So where I'm going to do the extra $120 that now that I'm saving, now I'm not going to do a CrossFit. So it's a viable exercise that you can put in front of yourself, and it's very easy to do. It's just, if you do it with someone that you love, and I emphasize love on it, because we do love each other, even though we're talking about finances, it can be a hard discussion. Then you need to do it in love, but you need to do it in transparency also, so that way both can get a clear understanding what's going on and how they're operating, because we're working as a unit, not as two separate units in the situation.
Okay. All right, guys. But real quick, guys, our time is almost done here. But we wanted to kind of get you guys in as we wrap up this series here on the reasons people go into debt. But now we're going to get into some really good topic that God has really put on my heart, and we started putting this together. And I know you guys have probably seen some of the posts we've made. We started putting out some trailers and some teasers about it. But it's called the 5 P's of financial stewardship. And this is something that I've been praying on, and God has kind of put this together for me. And I've talked it over with Rondell, and I'm going to share my screen with you guys real quick, and just kind of give you guys an idea of where we're going to be going with this. And we're going to be doing a complete series on this, where we're going to break this down. So basically, this is what, I prayed on this, and this is what God revealed to me. And we're going to go into these in great detail, as well as we're going to give the scriptural foundation for what we believe are the 5 P's of financial stewardship. The first one, and I'm just going to touch on each one of them real quick before we wrap this up. The first one is pray. That God has put it on us that before we do any task or do anything, we need to pray and seek the guidance from God first and foremost. Next is going to be purpose. Is that you need to find out what God's purpose is for you in your finances, and what is the purpose that you're asking God for X dollars, or why is it that you want these? Is your desire in line with what you prayed about and what the Bible says? Our purpose, for me in my house, my purpose is to have the ability to move in other people's lives and help other people, with the increase that God has provided us with, so that we can be a blessing to others. That's first and foremost. Anything else that we have left over that we can, bless and accommodate to my family, that's the purpose of that for us. Next is, once we find out what our purpose is, next we want to help you guys develop a plan of action. And because we're doing this from a financial standpoint, we want to help you put together a plan as far as being able to learn how to budget, being able to identify areas that you may be weak in, and we talk about these things. Next is going to be perform. Now we got your plan put together based on the word of God. Now it's time to get into action. Faith without works is dead. So you just praying that, this debt is going to go away and not doing anything to make it go away is not going to be fruitful for you. So next is perform. And then once you get to performing and God sees what you're doing and God gets involved. So the more God sees that he can trust you with something and the more faith you have in God that he's going to do his part, that performance, man, will speed up and you'll do things that you never thought was possible in your life. And the next thing is prosper. Now, this is the fifth thing that your life, and when I say prosper, I mean prosper in all aspects of your life. You know, when you don't have to worry about the bondage of debt and you don't have to worry about where this meal is coming from or how we're going to pay this bill or this or that. And then if somebody is in need and they need something, if you see a family and their tires on their car are balling and you can tell them, I want you to go up to Firestone, they're going to put 4 new tires on your car and they're going to be paid for it. You ain't got to worry about it. This is how we give glory to God, you know, by us being able to move in other people's lives. And I believe this is what true financial stewardship for our lives is being able to put ourselves in a position to where we can still have the desires of our heart, but the condition of our heart is built around being a service to other people. So, but that's real quick, guys, where we wanted to go with this thing. And how we wanted to kind of move. And we're going to break this thing down and we got some scriptural base for each one of these. But this is what God put on my heart. And this is what I really wanted to share with the community and really get everybody on the same page, because I want us all to be completely debt free with no bondage. I don't care how much debt you have. I believe that God is a God of that can outperform any situation that you're in. So, and with that being said, I think that these steps and us taking this approach to it will get us to a point where you and your family will be able to build something and you'll be able to live out what the Bible says when you will leave an inheritance to your children and your children's children. So I think if we properly manage our finances, we can get us to that point to where we'll understand our finances, how to invest, how to properly budget, how to stewardship, how to give, how to pray your tithes and your offerings and get you to that prosperous area, So, but did you want to add something to that, Rondell?
No, I think you summed it up great, Adrian. So over the next weeks or so, where 5 weeks or five bye weeks, because you see is 5 and we get on the channel every 2 weeks. We want to dive into this, and if you're out there and someone could benefit from this, remember this is ultimately you're going to be the first one to be affected by this, but ultimately we want to affect the world with this. And so if you know anyone else that may need to hear or want to listen or join in, by all means, please invite them. Because we do understand that we all start from somewhere. In this case, we're going to start with pray. And that's going to be the first thing that we launch out is, what are we praying for? Me and Adrian talks about it all the time, because you can pray for a multitude of things, but God knows your heart. So when you're praying, you need to make sure that your heart is in line with what those things are that you're praying for. Because we can't deceive the Lord. Come on, let's be real about it. He stays right in our heart. So I think that the information that you're going to get in the next upcoming sessions is going to be a blessing not only to yourself, but those you come in contact with. So if those who you think that will benefit from this, please join them. And by all means, we will receive them just like we receive everyone else, because we're all working towards the ultimate goal is to prosper, not for ourselves, but to be the hand, feet, the living that God will use us as his blessings in this earth. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Yep. So guys, I just put this up on the screen. I'm not going to go into it now because I've already exceeded your time by 1 minute. But these are some of the things that we're going to dig into next week in the scriptural basis for what we're planning to talk about. And we have other scriptures that we're going to apply to each one of these different series and the 5 Ps. So, but with that being said, guys, thank you guys again for your time. We'll get this video uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to share it to friends and family that are not on Facebook, we are planning to do God's work. And like I said, when we started, if it's just one person whose life we affect, or if it's 1,000 people, we're going to go out and we're going to be faithful and diligent in getting the word out and doing what God has purposed us to do. And we're going to help as many people as possible to achieve that goal of being 100% debt free and learn how to properly finance and get your feet, properly manage your finances and get your freedom back. So with that being said, guys, you guys have a great night. And thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. So have a good evening. Thanks again, guys.